Hi everybody, it's me Gemma, and I want to talk today about book talk and the most disturbing book recommendations and how I read most of them within the space of 3 weeks. Now, I fell down a bit of a rabbit hole on TikTok. I do enjoy horror books. I've been reading some horror books off and on for like 6-8 months now, something along those lines. And I never used to like horror, I never used to like horror books, but what can I say? Tastes change, and I've found that a lot of horror books are really easy to read. They're really quick. Most of them aren't that long, unless you're talking Stephen King. And let's be real, I didn't read any Stephen King for this particular challenge. So I'm going to start off with the two that I have in physical copy. The rest I read all on my Kindle. And the first one I want to talk about is Last Days by Brian Evenson. And it's got a foreword by Peter Straub. If you know Peter Straub, he's also quite a famous horror author. I would recommend skipping the foreword by Peter Straub before you dive into this book, because it spoils absolutely everything within those first few pages, and I wish that I had just skipped it. So don't do as I did and spoil all for yourself before you even start. Now, this is a very small book. It's only 170 pages. It follows a detective who is kidnapped, and he's kidnapped so that he can investigate the murder of the leader of a cult. And it all goes downhill from there, if indeed it can go down any further. It's very weird. It's got that sort of Twin Peaks David Lynch feel to it, and it's all told in very dispassionate language. It's full of just absolutely gut-churning, like amputations, surgeries, like loads of stuff like that. If you've got a weak stomach, I would not recommend this one at all. But if you enjoyed like Midsummer or what's that guy that wrote A Field in England? I can't remember the director's name, but he did A Field in England. He did another film quite recently that was set in like the Welsh valleys, and he does a lot of like folk horror. It has a very folk horror feel to it, despite the fact that it doesn't actually take place in like that sort of environment that you would expect. And it's really what would happen if Philip Marlowe was chucked into David Lynch and had his arm chopped off. So I gave this one 4 stars. I did really enjoy it, and I will probably pick up more of Brian Evanson's work. Apparently there's a really good short story collection, and I'll probably have a look at it as well. And then, now, this one pops up so much, and the author pops up so much as well on Disturbing Book TikTok, and it's Karen Slaughter, and this is Pretty Girls. Now, this is a standalone. Karen Slaughter has like 2 series that are ongoing as well, Grant County and Will Trent. I think the 2 have now met up, but the Grant County ones are really disturbing as well. This one is a standalone, and it follows a woman named Claire. Her husband is killed in a robbery gone wrong, and as she digs into his possessions and his stuff, she finds out that he was involved in some really disturbing things, and he really just was not the man that she thought he was. It also has an interweaving story with her sister, and she has another older sister who went missing way back when they were teenagers, so a lot's happened in this woman's life, and Karen Slaughter never skimps on descriptions of these things. If you are looking for sort of like crime novels that really don't skimp on the being disturbing, Karen Slaughter is a really good option. But I find that she does handle things a bit more sensitively. It's not like splatter horror or anything like that. And I didn't feel personally when I was reading this that it was exploitive, but your mileage may vary on that one. But definitely, if you like that sort of stuff, Karen Slaughter is really good. As I say, the Grant County series is also really disturbing. The first one's got a really gross, disturbing serial killer. There's one that's all about like a child abuse ring. Yeah, she's not afraid to beat her main characters up, I will say that. And then I moved on to books on my Kindle. And the first one was Theme Music by T. Marie Vandelli. I gave this 4 stars and I really liked it. Now, if you've ever read Poppy Z. Bright Drawing Blood, this one has parallels to it. But I felt that this one, no offence to Poppy Z. Bright, I really enjoyed Drawing Blood when I read it years ago. I felt this one was just slightly better done. And it's about a woman who buys or rents the house that her family were murdered in. So her family were all murdered when she was a baby, and she in this house, and she decides to move back into the house. Things start to go bump in the night. Is she going bonkers? Is the house actually haunted? You know, all that kind of stuff. I won't spoil it, but I really liked it. I did feel the ending was like a tad rushed. Just a tad rushed, which is why it only got 4 stars. It didn't get 5 stars. But did I feel it was disturbing? In places, I think the descriptions of how her family died were pretty disturbing, and also the ending was quite disturbing, but it wasn't the most disturbing thing I've ever read. Would I recommend it? Yeah, but you know, it's like it's like the Conjuring level of scary to me, anyway. And then this one I didn't really enjoy as much, and it's We Need to Do Something by Max Booth III. This one pops up on a lot of lists on TikTok, and basically a family, mum, dad, sister and brother are trapped in a bathroom while there is an extreme weather event going on outside, and spending that much time together in such a small space doesn't go well because nobody in that family is actually likeable whatsoever. And yeah, I mean, it started out life as a screenplay, apparently, I was reading, and afterward. And I can kind of get that. It does feel much more like a movie. It feels like Saw, you know, that first Saw where they're trapped in the room and there's a lot going on between the two characters, but there's not necessarily a lot of plot. That's how this book feels. I gave it like 2.5 stars, rounded up to 3, because I thought that it was a good start. But again, another really short one. Like, I think I read it in like an hour and a bit, maybe even that. I think I read it in like the bath in one go. So, would I recommend this one? Not so much. The first time TikToks kind of steered me wrong on the disturbing book front. And then I read Living Dead Girl by Elizabeth Scott. This one, oh my god, is absolutely heart-wrenching. Do not read this if you have a sensitive disposition towards sexual assault, child abuse, anything like that. Honestly, I was not expecting how affected I would be by it. It's not explicit in that sense. It's not like, it doesn't describe everything that's happening to this person, but it's about somebody who she's kidnapped as a little girl and she is held captive for 5 years. And as the narrative gets to her, the guy who kidnapped her is now, she's too old for him and he wants her to pick another child. It reminded me very much the story about Stephen Stainer, who was a boy in America who was kidnapped. And when the guy who kidnapped him kidnapped another boy, he sort of like saved the boy and himself and turned up at the police station. And that kind of is what this story reminded me of. It reminded me of that. And I really, it's not one that you can say you enjoy, because it's hard to enjoy something so gut-wrenching, but insanely well written, very short, and I would recommend this one. I gave it 4 stars. If you enjoy disturbing books, this is a good one. And then Children of the Red Peak by Craig DeLuey. Now, this is the second book about cults in this video. Very different from the other one. Very different in terms of tone, in terms of scope, in terms of style. much more of a sort of Joe Hill, Peter Straub, Stephen King style. Craig Delay. This one I've read two of his books now. I read another one that I think it's One of Us. It's called, but this basically follows four kids who survived a mass extinction event at a cult. So it was like a sort of Jonestown suicide event, but all the bodies went missing and nobody ever really solved this mystery of what happened. And it's told partially in flashback, the kids talking about their parents, their life in the cult, how it all started to go downhill, and how being in the cult has affected them in the rest of their lives. And I really thought that it could, it was supernatural, it did have supernatural elements. I felt like the story would almost have been better without that. I felt like it was scary enough and disturbing enough without bringing the supernatural element into it. Maybe I'm alone in that, but I ended up giving it, let's see, I gave it 4 stars. I think if it had just been straight up cult without any supernatural elements, then I would have given it 5 stars because I would have enjoyed it more. But I would recommend it, and I would recommend Craig Delue's other books as well. Like I say, I've read the other one, which is kind of a, it's children that are mutated and they're sort of, what do you call it? Pariahs. They're shunned. That's it. They're shunned from society. So I did like it. A good recommendation by Disturbing Book Talk. And then I read The Deep by Nick Cutter. Now, a couple of years ago, maybe a year or 2 years ago, The Troop by Nick Cutter was a really big book on BookTube, and a lot of people really enjoyed it. I read it and I wasn't as much of a fan. I found it very just disgusting. It was almost like Stephen King's Dreamcatcher movie as well, but on an island with Boy Scouts. It had that whole parasite, disgusting body horror thing, and that's just not my bag. You know, it's just not my thing. And having now as well read The Deep, I think that I am just not Nick Cutter's target audience. It's just not my kind of thing. The Deep takes place in the Marianas Trench, Challenger Deep, and basically, and this was what really annoyed me about it. There's like a disease called the Forgets that's affecting the whole world, and they're trying to find a cure. But the minute that they get into the actual station in the Marianas Trench where the scientists are meant to be, there's just no point. There was no point to the beginning of the book in terms of setting up the whole issue with the Forgets. It just didn't carry through, I thought, at all. And I didn't like anyone. Didn't like any of the characters. And yeah, I just didn't like it at all. It wasn't actively offensive. 2.5 stars. But I think if you liked The Troop, you would like The Deep. But I just don't, yeah, just wasn't for me. Bit of a letdown, but we'll let it pass. So then I read Gone to See the Riverman by Christopher Triana, and I don't know what, I thought this had something to do with the Green River Killer because I think Dave Reichert, one of the detectives in the case, wrote a book called Gone to See the Riverman. So I don't know why, but I associated it with that. It had absolutely nothing to do with it. Nothing. But basically, it's about a woman and she's been corresponding with a serial killer, and he gives her like a mission to do. He says, go to this place, pick up this thing, and take it to see the Riverman. And she wants to prove herself to him, so she goes, and she also takes with her her sister who has brain damage, like a learning difficulty. And it's not disgusting in the sense of body horror or gore or anything like that. It wasn't gory really to me. I don't think it was that bad. It's morally repugnant. You know, it's one of those ones where you're like, ew, ugh, put that one over there. Like, the main character, Laurie, is just an absolute bitch. And you just, when you get to later on in the book and you find out the things that she's done before she even started speaking to this serial killer, you're like, wow, this girl, she deserves nothing. Have a terrible day. I gave it 3 stars because I thought it was really well written. I thought the plot was good. The ending, whatever. The build up, though, to the actual finale was great. I thought the build up was good. The climax was a little but you know, if you enjoy fucked up stuff, you'll probably like this one. So how many is that? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 so far. You can tell that I have been doing no other socialising this month other than read. So after that, I read The End of Alice by A.M. Holmes, and again, not gory, but morally just disgusting. I gave it a 1 star because I didn't so much find it disturbing as I just found it disgusting. It basically is told from the point of view of a man who's in prison for raping and murdering a child. And it's, again, a girl on the outside who's writing to him, and there's a whole thing where she's abusing a boy who's younger than her, and yeah, it was just, yeah, it wasn't very long. I don't think you could sustain that level of disgusting for that long. It just burns itself out because you get to a certain point where, is there anything worse that can actually happen in this book? No. They kind of have reached the peak of disgusting, and that's it. There's nowhere to go from there. So yeah, I found this to be almost the opposite of the Elizabeth Scott one, Living Dead Girl. Living Dead Girl handled the subject matter really like sensitive, but it managed to let you know what was happening without being exploitive. I just felt that this went over the edge into being exploitive, you know. And yeah, I wouldn't read any more A.M. Holmes. I just wouldn't. So not a good one, I didn't think. And then now I read this one actually at the beginning. I think this was the first one I read, but for some reason it's far down the list. It's Still Missing by Chevy Stevens. I gave this one 4 stars. And the TikToker that I got it from has actually made quite a few decent recommendations, so I'll link their TikTok account down below. But this is about a woman who was kidnapped and held prisoner, and it's her basically telling her story to her new therapist. And she's just telling about what happened to her and the sort of aftermath of it, and how she's dealing with it or not dealing with it very well at all, and how the people in her life are sort of trying to rally around her but not really managing to do very well because none of them can really understand what's happened to her. And this one is quite graphic. I will say that it's graphic, but it's not schlock, it's not torture porn, but it is very explicit. So again, trigger warnings for rape, sexual assault, all that kind of stuff. And I would say it's on the level of like Karen Slaughter. If you've read Karen Slaughter's books, I would put it there. If you're a fan of her, I would say you probably like Chevy Stevens' other books. I have read another couple of hers as well. One about a cult, funnily enough, another book about a cult. And the other one is a kind of like sleeping with the enemy, domestic abuse story. I think that Still Missing has been the best one so far. But I've got another one on my Kindle waiting for me to read it. So I will let you know how that one goes. And I do apologise for the lighting, by the way. It's not amazing. It's Scotland in March, so this one I'd actually had on my Kindle for quite a long time. I think I got it on special offer or like first reads or something, but it's The Roanoke Girls by Amy Engel. And a woman basically moves back to her hometown, not her hometown, a woman moves back to her grandparents' hometown after her cousin goes missing. And her cousin is really the person that she's loved the most in her life. And they're looking for her cousin and sort of talking about why her mum originally left the family home and had her and committed suicide and all that kind of stuff. And it's basically about generational trauma, about child abuse, and about interfamilial child abuse as well. It's certainly not an easy book to read. I don't think the main character has a lot of things going on, and the antagonist of the book, which I figured out what was going on pretty early on in the book before they actually explicitly came out and said it. So yeah, it is a tough one. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was pretty well written, and I would read more of Amy Engel's books going forward. Was it disturbing? It was fair to middlingly disturbing. No more disturbing than watching true crime on Channel 5, to be honest. And now this author is a favourite of mine, and I've seen him pop up on quite a few different disturbing book lists, and it's Adam Nevill. Now, I'm going to recommend No One Gets Out Alive, but all of his books are good. I like them all. One of my favourites is The Ritual, which is also a movie on Netflix, and The Reddening as well, which is available on Kindle Unlimited if you want to try that. But No One Gets Out Alive is, I would say, his least folk horror book, and I do love his folk horror, but it's one of the most disturbing, and it's about a woman who's on really hard times. She's poor, she's not really got a lot of family, she's just in a bad way, and she takes a room in a flat in a building where a lot of disturbing stuff is happening, and the people that she shares the building with are disturbing. So this one does scare you, and I would recommend it as a good place to start with Adam Nevill. So that is all of the disturbing books I have read so far. There's still plenty more coming up on TikTok, and ones that I've read that I haven't even talked about because I read them quite a while ago, but like Annie Appleborn is one that comes up a lot. Not one that I would recommend, and I don't think I'll read any more of her books, but people keep recommending them. So, but those are the ones that I have read so far based off of TikTok most disturbing book videos. And if you have any more recommendations for disturbing books, then please do let me know. And also, point me if you have a TikTok channel or anything like that you want me to take a look at. But that's everything. Thanks. Take care. Bye.